Hi guys, Dwight here, and I'm back today with another one of our budget decklist series, and today we're looking at Abyssian. We had a great stream tonight, so thanks to everyone who came along and joined in with that. And as I say, the goal of this series really is just to find a decklist that works for every single faction, ideally below the cost of 1000 spirit. I've had a look around and there are a lot of decks out there that clock in at about 1500 up to 2000 spirit, which I wouldn't necessarily consider a budget deck. Obviously they're cheaper than a full deck, but they're really still a bit too expensive for a player who's just coming into the game and just trying to learn the ropes and see what kind of faction it is they like best. Also, a lot of people will focus mainly on their favourite faction, so if you have quests for another faction and you can't do them in the gauntlet, for example, you're going to want a workable deck that you can do with the minimum of investment. So that's really what this series is aiming to achieve. So our Lion-R deck that we did was 780 spirit, I think. This one comes in at exactly 1000, but I'm not sure really that I could get a good deck for cheaper than that. Now, I had a look around at the different archetypes earlier today. The first one I looked at was like a Swarm Deathwatch base deck, but it kind of fell flat because there are so many dispels and removals that your Deathwatch minions don't really ever get much value. Secondly, I looked at more of like an aggressive burn type deck, but a lot of the cards that I wanted for that were rare cards, and so it really kind of brought the cost of the deck up to more than I was happy to do really. And so the deck we've settled on is this one, which is based heavily around Shadow Nova. Now, for those of you who aren't aware, Shadow Nova is a 7 cost spell that spawns a 2x2 area of Shadow Creep, and the way Shadow Creep works is that it sets a tile on the board to be covered with this creep, which does 1 damage for every other Shadow Creep tile on the board. So for example, the first Shadow Nova you cast would spawn 4 tiles. It would do 4 damage on every square that is covered by Shadow Creep. This would then go up to 8 with the second Shadow Nova and 12 on every square with the third Shadow Nova. So you can really see the damage potential and the potential to create a really oppressive board state for your opponent once the game gets into the later stages. The only problem with this is getting to a stage where you can actually cast your 3 Shadow Novas and not be dead. So the deck we've built here is one that focuses a lot on survival and staying away as much as possible, while having quite a lot of removal to deal with anything that your opponent throws at you up to that point. So the key to this deck is Shadow Creep, as I say, and we have our 3 Shadow Novas in there obviously, but we also have 3 Abyssal Crawlers, which are 1-drop 2/1s that when they die spawn an extra tile of Shadow Creep where they die. So realistically they're just there as cannon fodder and to add to the damage potential of Shadow Nova later in the game. So for 2-drops we have Healing Mystics, which are very solid and they help with our idea of sustaining towards the later game. We also have 3 Jaxies, which they're in almost every deck. They're very, very effective 2-drops. Once they die, they spawn the 1/1 mini Jax in a random corner of the map, which is ranged, and a lot of people will go out of their way to try and kill these. So even if you get nothing else out of it and it just dies straight away, or it baits a dispel, then Jaxie tends to draw more attention than your average 2-drop, so that's of benefit to us as well. Our final 2-drop is Mana Forger, which while it's a little bit expensive is quite a key card to this deck, and the reason for that is that while it's only a 1/2, its active effect, its aura if you like, is that it reduces the cost of any spell you cast by 1. So not only does this make a couple of our spells free to cast while it's alive, it also increases the chances of us being able to cast our Shadow Novas early and cast another card while we cast Shadow Nova as well. So it's really key to help us accelerate the game and get board control earlier than we otherwise would do so. So really all you want to do with these is play them at the back of the field, keep them safe as long as you possibly can, and use that to generate a tempo advantage through how quickly we can cast our spells. Our 3-drops are filled with rush minions. We have 3 Night Sorrow Assassins and 3 Saberspine Tigers. So what these cards do is they allow us to both go aggressive if we need to or if we want to. They allow us to push a little bit of extra face damage later in the game if we just need to finish our opponent off. They also act as spot removal, as they did in our Lion-R deck, to get rid of minions that we otherwise would have trouble reaching, or minions that otherwise would be troublesome to us. So while we already have a form of displacement in our deck in Demonic Lore, the reason we've included Repulsor Beast as well is that because we're playing with board affecting spells essentially. We can use the Repulsor Beast and the Lord to put minions onto the creep so that we can deal damage to them. The second reason we do this is that they serve slightly different purposes. Repulsor Beast obviously can only be spawned in your zone of influence, so if you have a big minion dropped onto you and you desperately need to get it away, then Repulsor Beast achieves that. The other reason is that Demonic Lord can also be used as a 1 damage spell if we need it in that sense as well, and so it has a little bit more versatility that you may want to save it for later in the game, and so you have Repulsor Beast as another option that also leaves a 2/2 body behind. Now I think of all the cards in this deck, this and Primus Shieldmaster are probably the most replaceable, but I do like having the extra options in the deck when I ran it earlier today. With 4 drops we have the 2 Emerald Rejuvenators that we also crafted for Lionar. Ideally I want to use as many crossovers in these decks as possible so that people don't have to craft a load of extra cards, and Emerald Rejuvenator is just a very, very solid mid-rangey type minion. It's a 4/4 for 4 mana that also heals you for 4, so obviously that again helps with our goal of sustaining towards the end of the game. Primus Shieldmaster again is another card that kind of helps keep your health total up, helps keep people in places away from you. It's a provoke minion. As a 2/6 it can be fairly tricky to get rid of because it's a fairly high health total, and as I say, it's kind of a pseudo heal in that it forces people to put damage into it instead of you, so it can help you against more aggressive decks as well. The single Silhouette Tracer is in there because the utility it allows is quite unique. Its opening gambit is that your general can teleport 4 spaces, and so that can help us either reach a ranged minion in a corner, it can help get us away from provoke minions, it can help us just kiting around the board until we find the spells that we need. It has a lot of utility, and I maybe would include more of these if you had them, because as I say, it's very unique in the effect that it has. So the final minion at the top of our list is Dancing Blades, which is just another solid valuable minion. Its opening gambit is that it does 3 damage to any minion in front of it, and it will pretty much always find a target to hit. So either if this is a low cost 3 health minion, which is pretty much any 2-drop, or it will help hit something bigger so that you can chip it down with other targets as well. So having a 4/6 body as well makes it fairly durable, and so it's just a good include to help us push towards the 7/8 mana slot where we can start using our Shadow Novas. In terms of spells, we have Void Pulse, which is a really good spell for both sustaining and doing a bit of chip damage to the enemy general, and it also has the effect of being able to knock durability off of artifacts, which is especially important against Songhai, and so I feel like Void Pulse is almost an auto include in most Abyssian decks, and especially this one. Grasp of Agony is a very, very efficient low cost spell which allows us to both clear the board and find extra damage for lethal if we were to, say, drop a Shadow Nova on the enemy general with a minion next to it and then put the Grasp of Agony on that as well to do an extra 3 damage when that minion dies at the end of the turn. So this is another card which really helps play into our strategy. Demonic Lore I already talked about as a displacement that's incredibly versatile. It can be used as just a 1 damage spell if you need to. It can be used to reposition a minion next to other minions so that we can get more value out of Grasp of Agony. It can be used to get a big minion away from you and put it onto Shadow Creep so that Shadow Creep will kill that minion. It's just incredibly versatile, and because, as I say, we're playing such a board state centric deck, then Demonic Lore has a lot of uses for us, and so is it, as I say, incredibly valuable. So Dark Transformation is the last spell on our list. It's a card I'm not particularly sold on, but because we're not like a swarm deck, we don't have the tokens necessary to sacrifice minions to use ritual banishing or things like that. It is really our only option in terms of hard removal. The reason I don't like it is that it costs 5 mana just to turn a minion into a 1/1. It does turn it into a 1/1 for us, but 5 mana is an awful lot when you consider the other cheap removals that other classes have. The only reason we have this is because, as I say, we have a lack of other options for hard removal, and so if something gets massively buffed, or if something has like Third Wish against Vitruvian, or an effect that you just really don't want to deal with and you need to get it off the board, then Dark Transformation is really our only answer for that. So in terms of difficulty piloting this deck, I do think it is more difficult than the Lionar deck from the previous video, because I do think Lionar is fairly straightforward and all their cards pretty much do exactly what it says on the tin. There is a lot more subtlety and nuance to how this deck plays out, and in terms of finding like extra damage for lethal, or planning out your mana properly and seeing what else you could squeeze in with like the use of a mana forger, for example, there are a lot of kind of tricks and considerations that you have to make every turn to be successful. But I think that is also part of what makes this deck a lot of fun. I do think that Shadow Nova is a very fun spell, and I do think that Abyssian is a very fun faction and probably one of my favourites. So I hope this video has been informative. I hope the deck works for you as well as it did for me. We got to gold with it earlier, so very successful in terms of what I was planning to do with it. The following clips will obviously just give you a brief idea of how you go ahead and play the deck and just show its potential. If you have any comments, obviously leave them below. I'll be continuing to stream and make videos, and so I'll be back tomorrow with another deck. I struggled a bit more with getting a decent Abyssian deck, bearing in mind I'm looking to keep these below 1000 spirit where possible. This is the best iteration I've come up with so far. It is largely based around Shadow Nova, and there are obvious improvements that we could make to it if we had a little bit more spirit or better cards available. So Abyssal Crawler, not the best early drop we could hope for, but we'll go ahead and get it out there. It'll add towards Shadow Nova damage later in the game. So the goal of this deck is much like other Shadow Nova oriented Abyssian decks, is you want to put as much damage on the enemy general as you can to set up for Shadow Novas later in the game, but we also want to stall the game out to a point where we can actually start to use them. Obviously it's 7 mana, they are costly, they'll take up our entire turn later in the game, and so we do need to be in a position to use them and not be rushed down before that. I'm not entirely sure I'm fancying our chances in this game straight away, but we are on a well I am on a 4 win streak with this deck currently, so I can just leave these and allow them to go back to his hand if I wanted to. Alternatively, I can use the Night Sorrow Assassin to kill one and attack into the other one. He would have to use 2 mana to obviously play it out again if I were to leave it, but I don't think I can really leave 2/3/3 brush minions to keep coming at me, so I've got to kill at least one of them. So the only question is really whether we can waste a whole turn on using Night Sorrow to kill off the other one, and the answer to that is probably not. So we do have some healing in hand, which is good. I think we're definitely going to need it as this carries on. But this kind of deck where you're playing for later in the game is always going to be susceptible to decks that are just looking to rush you down as fast as possible. Yeah, obviously there isn't a whole lot of counterplay to stuff just charging at your face early in the game. So again, I can Night Sorrow to kill this, or Saber Spine to kill this, but that takes up my whole turn to do it. I could move Jaxi to here, charge it in, and then use a Healing Mystic to heal myself, which might be slightly better. I'm going to replace the Night Sorrow because I need to start looking for other survival options or Shadow Novas. Move my general back as well to put some distance between myself and him. So Thankfully he doesn't have another inner focus to move this in behind me straight away. It's probably going to make sense for me to position back here so that he can't backstab me. I'm not really in any risk of being swarmed. So I'll replace an Emerald Rejuvenator because obviously I can only play out one this turn. I can't deal with this entirely. Keep the Jaxi up the field somewhat to both act as a block and bait, kind of. Could have saved the Void Pulse in case he uses any artifacts, because it's an extra ping to take durability off that I might struggle to take off otherwise. But I had a mana spare, and obviously if he's trying to rush me down I want to keep my health up and use that extra mana as efficiently as I can. So Knights Horror Assassin is pretty ideal here. We can use Grasp of Agony to kill off the Scarlet Viper, do 3 damage to him. We won't be able to kill the other Mogwai, but that's fine. Just go ahead and play up the Abyssal Creeper as well. Again, we'll play it up the field, so he might be tempted to come in and attack this. I'm going to keep hold of this Void Pulse for now, because I don't particularly like the healing or damage it does at the moment. Isn't going to be really that crucial right now. 19's a decent health total. If I do need to get rid of this next turn, I can just lure it to kill it off. I don't want him, if he's using loads of low cost cards and emptying his hand, then I want to limit his draw options if I can. So provided Jaxi survives now, then that's another big value Grasp of Agony that we'll be able to use here. So we don't need lure. Getting all the Grasp of Agonies. I feel like we can start moving these minions up a bit to kind of threaten him a bit more. I'm going to keep my back to the wall because I've got no reason to really go up and try and hit him. Also, by having at least one minion further up the field, it means that I've got obviously more options for where I spawn my minions. Seems like he had a way to attack this, but opted not to do it. So if we move this up here, we can spawn the Knight Sorrow to kill the Gorehorn. So again, I'm just moving these up now to kind of corner him and threaten him a bit more. Drawn into my Shadow Nova as well, so that will be 7 damage this turn. So if this gets something like Inner Focus and Mist Dragon Seal, it could come in here and kill all of these. But like I say, once you start drawing into your Shadow Novas and you have control of the board, then you're in a really good position to win from that point onwards. If I Grasp of Agony the Sword of Mechazor, that does another 3 damage, so if we just Void Pulse here, that'll be lethal. As you can see, like once you've got Shadow Creep on the board and it's not getting dispelled, if you can kind of back them into a corner, then Shadow Nova starts to get insane value, and it gets more valuable every time you cast it. At base level, obviously, it's just 4 damage because you have 4 tiles of shadow creep. So subsequent ones then would be obviously 8 damage and 12 damage, but we also have the abyssal crawlers to spawn shadow creep as well, so potential maximum of 15 damage once we've played through our whole deck just from one Shadow Nova. Didn't get put somewhere random and awkward and then get third wish by attacking into my healing mystic, but instead it just gets third wish, kills everything, and then gets put in my face by my own spell. I'm really not sure that this style of deck has a very good matchup against Vitruvian anyway. So at least at the high ends of ladder where Vitruvian's extremely popular, it may be a problem, but I am seeing more and more Vitruvian as that trickles down as well, so this may not be the counter to that for sure. So I can either take the mana crystal and use the Primus to lock these two down, or I can just move up and attack and play out both of these. I think I'd prefer to play the Primus. If I play it onto this mana crystal, then I can play the Abyssal Creeper as well. I'll keep the Healing Mystic just so I've definitely got a minion to play next turn. So if I move back, I can kill the mini-jacks with the Night Sorrow. Alternatively, I can just move this back to threaten it, which I probably prefer. So this way this stays alive, and we can just trade this with our general. There's no point in really healing this, it'll survive another attack. And it doesn't have provoke anymore. I'll play this up here so it blocks the path to the mana spring. If I can keep control of that until turn 6, then I may be able to drop a Nova earlier than usual. I'm going to use the Night Sorrow to kill this. If I use the Jaxi, then I have a 3 in 4 chance that my mini Jax isn't going to spawn in an awkward position. And that way I can leave my Healing Mystic here to protect the spring. Never lucky. So now if I move my Mystic across to here, then at least I can play the Abyssal Creeper behind. So I don't think that's a particularly good Shadow Nova right now. If I kill this off first, then I get an extra point of damage on it. So I can either keep the Law and use that to kill off the mini-jacks to keep mine alive, or I can just trade them off. Thing is, I can't kill this and protect this, so I'm better off trading really. So when this starts, our first Shadow Nova is going to do 7 damage then. So these are really helping the cause. Like as bad as I think 1-drops generally are. Obviously 2-1 just dies for free to the general most of the time. The fact that it leaves a tile of Shadow Creep behind, which Shadow Nova calculates its damage on, makes it a pretty integral inclusion to the deck. Like, you never know against Songhai, like what they've got in their hand and how quickly they can just kill you without having anything on the board at all. But I think having 3 minions up and as much Shadow Creep as we do and a Shadow Nova in hand, that this game should be a win. Especially if he's not going to do anything. That makes it much easier. So I'll just go ahead and chuck away that. Just throw these into his face. No reason not to at this point. So that'll leave him on 4 health, which means outside of healing, or let's just straight up die in this turn, then we definitely kill him next time. 2 health even. Okay. I hope this isn't about to just get really, really bad very quickly. Just lose a game when he straight up missed a turn. Okay, I think we're fine. Just about. The reason that you won't see so many 1-1 mini-Jexes surviving is because, like you say, Vitruvian's really popular, Vanar's really popular, Lionar as well, and all of those have access to really cheap dispels, and there's also like Ephemeral Shroud, which a lot of decks run as well. So there are a lot of dispels as well to counter it, but also people run a lot of like 1 damage pings or spot removals, both to deal with artifacts and to deal with mini-Jexes. And there's even a lot of people like including crossbones just to deal with mini-Jex. So you don't see many of them like surviving and getting out of hand, but similarly there's a reason that kind of all of the silencers in that are as popular as they are, and a lot of it is to do with Jaxi. He's like almost the strongest 2-drop in the game. I'd say he's the strongest neutral 2-drop, with things like Tuskboar and Windblade Adept probably being just above him. It's not as like meta defining as it is in Hearthstone, because in Hearthstone obviously everyone runs like Haunted Creepers, Mad Scientists, Piloted Shredders, because the value you get off them is absolutely massive. Like Death Rattles in that game are completely out of control, and everyone will run an owl just to deal with like 1. So it's kind of 6 of one and half a dozen of the other, really, in that Dying Wishes are strong in this game, but there are a lot more readily available counters to them. Which I guess is like a separate kettle of fish. Like, causes problems of its own in that, like, there's almost too much removal in this game so that big minions don't really get played. I don't know that I necessarily value Primer Shieldmaster that much. I value the fact that it's a basic card, so it doesn't cost anything, and kind of the whole purpose of what I'm doing at the moment is to create a deck for every faction that's capable of like competing at gold level while not costing more than 1,000 spirit. So like in this deck, there's a ton of options I could use to improve the deck without a shadow of a doubt. It's just that Primer Shieldmaster kind of does the job of something like an Emerald Rejuvenator, in that it's going to save you some health by virtue of the fact that it's a provoke, while not costing 100 dust to be in the deck. Would it be fair to call myself the Trump of Duelyst? Absolutely not. I think Trump is great. I really enjoy his stream. I enjoy his videos. I think his attitude is awesome. I think Trump has the credentials to back up being the Trump of Hearthstone, if you get what I mean, where I don't really have the credentials or the following to call myself the Trump of Duelyst just yet, anyway. Perhaps we'll get there soon. I think that was a compliment though, so thank you very much. But yeah, I guess more what you're getting at is like the free-to-play aspect of it, as opposed to anything else. So I guess in that regard, then yeah, I'm trying to do what I can from like a budget perspective. But might be a bit early to call myself Trump just yet. Thanks though, man. I think that's made my day. Yeah, not necessarily with Primal Chillmaster. Like, I'm not saying like he's got to be in every deck. It's just where I am at this point in time, like at this part of the month, is just trying to get a deck for every faction that's workable on less than 1,000 spirits. So I've already done Lionheart. That was probably the most straightforward because they have so many great cards that just stand on their own. They don't really require much of an investment. Obviously just stuff like Ironcliff Guardians. So I think we did that one for about 780 spirit. Abyssian was a bit trickier, but I've got this list which is 1,000 spirit, and we're currently on a streak at the moment, pretty close to gold. So ideally, yeah, I want to get one done for each of the factions so that everyone, like, depending on whatever it is they want to play, they've got a solid starting point to go from. So don't have any value for Grasp of Agony right now. I'm going to move this up to threaten the Mana Forger. I think, like, I could Night Sorrow this, but it's not really worth it. I'm just going to play out this. Lure this, move up here. Animations, please. Right. So that's potentially like quite a valuable Grasp of Agony there, but it's okay. We need to put some pressure on. Yeah, right now, Daniel, we've done Lionheart and now we've done Abyssian, so over the course of the next few days I'll be getting one done for every one of the factions. Probably the next one I'll do is Vanar, because I think that's probably the easiest to put something together. Magmar I'm a bit intimidated by. I don't know how well that one's going to go. But yeah, I want to get there and do one for every class, because like you say, I think it's really important for people coming into the game to have an idea of what they can achieve with just like the basic card set before they start thinking, looking around at like all the constructed deck lists people are using and tier lists and things like that, and thinking like, how am I ever going to do anything if I need 8,000 dust to craft a deck that's functional, or like a tier 2 deck? So obviously it all depends what people are looking to get out of the game, but at the moment I kind of just want to give new players a solid starting point to go from. Can we kill him? 4, 8, 12. We could replace this. We haven't got a minion nearby. I don't have a lure to pull this over. So no, we can't kill him this turn, but I think we can create enough of a health swing that we just win the game. So outside of like something very similar from him, with several void pulses and some healing, I think we should win this one. We've got a Shadow Nova ready to go next turn, which is 5 damage. Yeah, that's it. Like, a lot of people are going to come into the game and they're not going to want to spend money. I know a lot of people as well come from Hearthstone, where they've already invested a ton of money as it is, so they don't necessarily want to spend any more. Oh dear. Okay. I thought Void Pulse was going to come out then and like kill us or tie the game or whatever, but we're fine. That's gold for us, so this deck's certainly capable of getting to gold. Obviously, it's got to a point, at least at the moment, where you're just throwing out like biggest minion after biggest minion after biggest minion, seeing what sticks, and generally whoever curves out best or has the right answers wins. Whereas with Duelyst, like, you're always in a position where you can control to a degree what's happening on the board through your placement of minions and your positioning. You draw more cards every turn, and you can replace a card every turn, so you're obviously going to find what's in your deck a lot more consistently than you do in Hearthstone as well. Now, my only kind of concern with it is twofold, and that is one of the rewards this season, or one of the new cards this season, was White Widow, which, if you haven't seen it, is a minion that every time you replace a card, it randomly does 2 damage to something on the board, which is really reminiscent of Knife Juggler. Secondly, I think with the game in its current state, withdrawing 2 cards every turn and your hand size being 6, that if you're not playing 2 cards a turn, then you're limiting your draws. And removal in this game is so cheap that everyone has a load of removal. But those are relatively minor problems that are easily addressed compared to, I think, the kind of state that Hearthstone got into. Oh, that's unfortunate for them. Yes, Dr. Boom. I didn't craft Dr. Boom because I'm stubborn and a bit of a hipster for about 6 months plus, and then it just got to a point where kind of there was no point trying to run anything remotely mid-range or control without Dr. Boom. Like Dr. Boom himself isn't the problem with the game, it's just kind of another one of the problems with the game, if you get me. I've got a couple of options here. I can either Dancing Blades, Grasp of Agony to kill off this as well, but I would take 4 damage, and I'm already below on health, fairly low on health. I am kind of 3 Shadow Creep tiles ahead though, so my Shadow Nova is going to be doing a lot more than his. Alternatively, I can just Silhouette Tracer back here to kill this, but it doesn't really develop anything, so I think we're better off doing the Dancing Blades thing. But I don't have enough mana. I can't count. Okay, that's fine. I'm going to keep the Silhouette Tracer just in case I need to get out of here. Like, because he's got a mana forger on the board, good chance he could drop a Shadow Nova a lot earlier. Then the card text says warning, boombots might explode. That I kind of assumed that the trade-off from having 2 extra boombots over a war golem would be that those boombots could go absolutely anywhere. But the reality is that they obviously just kill your opponent's board for just playing the minion. So kind of Dr. Boom always went like at least 2 or 3 for 1, which is kind of insane value. Well, this isn't good. Move and kill this. Can't kill this. Or can I? Yes, I can with Night Sorrow, but then I can't heal myself. Don't need Grasp of Agony right now. So I can heal myself with Void Pulse if I do it that way. I would be dead to another Night Sorrow, but kind of in desperate times now. Alternatively, I can just kind of play out my Rejuvenator and the Void Pulse. Might be slightly better. If I move this away, it's like less of an inviting Shadow Nova. Yeah, really not in a good spot at all. I definitely agree, Daniel, that there are some cards that are unbalanced. I expect Keeper of the Veil is going to be looked at because it's kind of everywhere at the moment. Okay. Yeah, so that was a lot more aggressive variant of this deck, and didn't do too well there, but you win some, you lose some. So until I've got Dark Transformation, I feel like the best thing to do with this is just throw it in a corner and move to the other end of the board. It buys me like a turn or two at least. Well, I thought it would do the damage before, and then put it where I wanted to put it, not put it right in front of me. I think we could just concede. Like, I can't deal with it. It's gonna kill me.